Take a breath, deep one. Because the validation you've been seeking is here. That feeling, that strange, beautiful certainty that you are remembering things you never learned, is the first, clearest evidence of an activation. It's the sheer relief of, I'm not crazy. This is actually real. This knowing without a traceable source is the profound realization that your experience is not limited to the memory stored within the finite confines of your individual brain. That single, most crucial truth is the bedrock of everything we're exploring. Your consciousness, your awareness, is not merely a biological byproduct. It is a quantum being with access to something vast and non-local. The information you are receiving isn't a figment of your overactive imagination. It is memory, but it's not memory from this lifetime's singular experiences. It is memory sourced directly from the quantum field itself. Why has mainstream science refused to acknowledge this capacity? Because the dominant, materialist paradigm insists that consciousness and its memories must be localized, meaning they have to be stored in the physical structures of your brain, primarily the neurons and their synaptic connections. But imagine, for a moment, that this model only explains the smaller, personal, temporal sliver of memory. What if consciousness doesn't just store memory in neurons? What if, crucially, consciousness can also access memory from an external, universal repository? This is where the quantum field comes in. It is not a metaphorical place. It is an information field predicted by the deep mathematics of quantum mechanics, existing beneath the very fabric of physical reality. This field is a universal archive, where all information that has ever been known, everything that has ever been understood, and everything that has ever occurred by any consciousness exists simultaneously and remains permanently encoded. The mystics, the ancient seers, and the esoteric traditions called this the Akashic Records, the cosmic library of all experience. Quantum physics, through its exploration of information preservation and non-locality, gives it a different name, the quantum information field. But make no mistake, these are just different names for the exact same phenomenon. This is the universal memory bank, accessible to a consciousness that develops the specific capacity to interface with it. How does this access work? We look to the most confounding principle in quantum physics, entanglement. Quantum entanglement proves, without a doubt, that information isn't local. When two particles become entangled, they share information instantaneously, regardless of the distance separating them, whether they are inches or light years apart. There is no signal traveling between them at the speed of light. The correlation is non-local. This phenomenon demonstrates that information exists in a state that transcends physical boundaries and immediate space-time. Your consciousness works the same way. Your awareness, the you that perceives and thinks, isn't simply trapped inside your skull, limited to accessing the data stored in your neurons. Your awareness is a quantum phenomenon that can interface with the non-local information field. Think of your individual brain not as the source of all your knowing, but as the sophisticated receiver and tuner. Every brain is capable of storing personal memory, yes, but it is also a highly sensitive quantum antenna. And when this receiver, this biological instrument, develops sufficiently, when its frequency is raised and its interference is quieted, it can tune into the universal frequencies where quantum memory becomes accessible. This is the truth. What you call your knowing is often the universal field expressing itself through you. To truly trust this experience, you must learn to distinguish it from a normal memory. The memory accessed through the quantum field is qualitatively different from brain-based memory. It feels familiar. You remember the context, where you learned it, when you experienced it, who taught it to you. It is personal, connected to your life, contemporal, fixed in time. It feels sudden. The information appears complete, fully formed, without any source you can personally identify. It is transpersonal, information about things you've never personally encountered, existing in the collective field. And a temporal? It appears without any temporal context, as if you've always known it, and you've simply become conscious of that knowing right now. Recognizing this distinction is absolutely crucial. If you dismiss quantum memory as false memory, as simple imagination, or as making things up, you are missing an essential evolutionary development occurring in your consciousness. You are not creating the information. You are accessing it from the field's universal storage. That unlocking capacity is what we need to cultivate. The first, clearest sign that quantum memory is unlocking is knowing without learning. This is not a vague hunch. This is specific, detailed, and undeniable knowledge about a subject you have never formally explored. Imagine this. You are suddenly able to speak about a topic, say, the obscure history of 15th century Mongolian metallurgy, with unexpected expertise. You understand complex concepts without ever having read the textbooks. You possess a working knowledge that, by all societal standards, should require years of rigorous study, yet it simply appeared in your awareness. It's the ultimate hack to the 10,000-hour rule. This knowledge has no source in your personal history, yet it exists clearly in your conscious awareness. It is a direct data download from the quantum library. The next time this happens, stop immediately. Do not rationalize it away. Write down the specific details of what you know. Later, research those details. When they verify, you gain an irrefutable piece of evidence that the field is real. The second sign, closely related, is sudden expertise in unexpected areas. You discover you can do something you never practiced. Maybe you pick up a foreign language with shocking speed, understanding complex grammatical structures that should have taken months to grasp. Maybe you find yourself able to perform a skill, say, a complicated maneuver in a hobby you just started far beyond a beginner's level. The expertise is not always complete mastery, but it is profoundly beyond the level it should exist without intentional learning. And here's the key. It proves accurate. The knowledge works, the skill functions, and the understanding holds up when tested in the real world. This is your consciousness accessing and downloading the stored expertise of others from the quantum field. The third sign is the deep, spiritual sense of recognition rather than discovery. When you encounter a specific philosophical text, a spiritual teaching, or a scientific concept, you don't feel like you are consuming something new. You feel like you are remembering something you already knew, but had simply forgotten. This recognition is immediate, profound, and utterly certain. It's the difference between saying, "Ah, that makes sense," and saying, "Oh, I already knew this. I just needed this person's words to remind me." That feeling is your consciousness detecting that the external information perfectly matches a blueprint already stored in your quantum memory. A final cluster of signs solidifies the reality of this axis. Dreams containing detailed, unlearned information. These are not random, symbolic dreams. These are dreams where you are actively learning, teaching, or experiencing information that proves accurate upon waking. You receive instruction about a subject you've never studied, or access memories that don't belong to your personal history, but feel absolutely real and contextual. During sleep, your critical mind's filters are offline, allowing the information to flow more freely from the field into your awareness. Spontaneous flow beyond your conscious knowledge. This happens when you are speaking or writing. Information flows out of you that you did not consciously prepare or know. Your writing contains concepts that surprise you with their depth and articulation. You are essentially channeling from the quantum field, allowing its collective information to express through you, bypassing the slow, laborious process of conscious retrieval from your brain. Past lifelike memories with verifiable details. These are not vague sentiments about being an Egyptian queen. These are detailed memories from a different time, place, or life that contain specific, accurate, historical details you couldn't possibly know, correct names of obscure historical figures, precise locations, or accurate descriptions of ancient customs. These are often consciousness accessing information about past experiences encoded in the field, experiencing them as if they were personal memories, because your awareness is perceiving from the quantum level where all experience is accessible. The essential question now is, why is this unlocking happening now? Access to the quantum field is not a random gift. It emerges at a specific stage of consciousness evolution, the stage you have reached. The first trigger is ego dissolution. As long as consciousness is rigidly identified with the individual, separate self, this is me, that is other, the boundaries created by the ego block the perception of universal information. But when the ego begins to soften, when consciousness recognizes it is a quantum awareness temporarily experiencing an individual perspective, those boundaries thin. Through these thinned boundaries, the information from the quantum field begins to seep into conscious awareness. The second trigger is frequency elevation. The quantum field exists at a subtle, high vibrational frequency. Your individual, busy, brain-based consciousness operates at a lower, denser frequency. As you engage in contemplative practices, undergo transformative experiences, or simply expand your awareness, your consciousness's frequency rises. When your frequency reaches the crucial threshold where it matches the field's frequencies, access naturally opens. You don't have to try to access the field. Your consciousness naturally tunes to the correct station. Other major catalysts can force this shift. Activation through crisis or breakthrough, a major life disruption, a deep loss, a health emergency, a spiritual awakening shatters your normal consciousness patterns. This disruption creates a temporary, massive opening in the filter that usually blocks perception, allowing quantum information to flood in. While the access might stabilize or reduce after the crisis passes, your consciousness has tasted quantum memory and knows it exists, making deliberate development possible. Specific age developmental stages. Consciousness evolves through predictable stages across the lifespan. Midlife, for example, often triggers quantum memory access as the consciousness questions the identity built in the first half of life and opens to a larger awareness. Elder years can activate access as consciousness prepares for transition beyond the physical form. Collective field shift. Crucially, we are in a period of rapid collective evolution. Old paradigms are collapsing, new awareness is emerging, and a species-wide frequency elevation is occurring. You are benefiting from a collective field that is now far more conducive to quantum access than it was for previous generations. What was once a rare mystical capacity is fast becoming a more common, natural development. I know this is real because I've lived it. My own quantum memory unlocked during an extended meditation retreat. I wasn't seeking it. I was simply sitting, quieting the mind, when suddenly information flooded in. Detailed knowledge about ancient philosophies I'd never touched. Understanding of languages I'd never learned. Memories of places I could describe with stunning precision. The flood was overwhelming, disorienting, impossible to explain through the rules I thought governed the mind. At first, I dismissed it as imagination. But after the retreat, I began to research what I had remembered. Specific details about ancient texts, precise locations, accurate philosophical concepts, everything verified. I had not imagined it. I had accessed real information from the quantum field. What followed was a profound realization. The limitation wasn't what was available, but my awareness's capacity to perceive what was available. This unlocking fundamentally changes your relationship with knowledge. You are no longer solely trying to acquire information you lack. You are simply removing the barriers that prevent your consciousness from accessing the information that already exists universally. If you choose the path of conscious development, you must understand what supports access versus what blocks it. These are not techniques to force access, but conditions to remove interference that is blocking the access that wants to occur naturally. Mental stillness. Quantum information is subtle. When the mind is loud, constantly thinking, analyzing, judging, a subtle signal from the field is drowned out. In stillness, the information appears not as thoughts, but as direct knowing that surfaces in the quiet space beneath the thinking mind. Meditation is not about achieving a blank mind. It is about creating a quiet chamber for reception. Emotional neutrality. Strong emotions, fear, desire, anger create energetic static that distorts the quantum information. When consciousness is emotionally balanced, not suppressed, but not overwhelmed, the access clarifies. You perceive information accurately, rather than filtered through emotional needs. This neutrality is a warm presence, not cold detachment. Believe access is possible. Doubt creates quantum interference stronger than the signal itself. If your consciousness fundamentally believes this is not real, that belief acts as a massive filter, preventing perception of information that contradicts it. You don't need absolute proof to begin, only an openness. Maybe this is real. I am willing to explore. That openness removes the doubt interference. Surrender the need to understand. The ego wants to figure out how the memory works, explain the mechanism, and logically organize the data as it arrives. This analytical trying interferes with intuitive receiving. The quantum field communicates through direct knowing, not logical explanation. Receive first, analyze later. Trust what appears, provisional trust. When information arrives, the ego's immediate response is, did I really receive this? Or did I make it up? That self-questioning blocks further reception. Practice provisional trust. Receive the information, be willing to explore its accuracy, and verify it later. This trust tells the field your consciousness is a reliable receiver. Use what's received. The quantum field responds to a consciousness that actually applies the information accessed. When you receive knowing and use it to solve a problem, create a work of art, or offer insight to another, access strengthens. Use demonstrates receptivity and integration. A crucial moment arrives after access stabilizes. The information accessed is not always comfortable. The field is neutral. It contains everything. Sometimes you access knowledge that conflicts with your current beliefs, challenges your comfortable worldview, or requires you to release a certainty you've built your entire identity around. You may remember collective suffering, past traumas encoded in the field, or uncomfortable truths about history. The cognitive dissonance between what quantum memory reveals and what consensus reality insists is true can be profoundly destabilizing. The ego will resist this uncomfortable truth, but the discomfort itself is often evidence of genuine access. If you were making it up, your imagination would create comfortable, reinforcing stories. The mature practice is learning to hold the paradox, not dismissing quantum access because it conflicts with your beliefs, and not abandoning all previous understanding because the quantum memory reveals something different. Hold the tension between brain-based knowing and field-based knowing. The tension between them is not a point of failure, but the point where consciousness truly evolves. What is happening individually is happening collectively to millions globally. This isn't an isolated phenomenon. It is a species-wide activation. R. Sheldrake's concept of morphic resonance explains why this is accelerating. As more individuals develop access, the morphic field strengthens, making the activation easier for everyone approaching a similar developmental stage. You are benefiting from everyone who came before, and your activation strengthens the field for everyone who follows. Furthermore, technology, the internet, global communication, AI is mirroring this consciousness evolution. As external information becomes vastly more accessible, the internal, quantum memory becomes more accessible. Consciousness and technology are evolving in parallel toward a unified field awareness. You are preparing for the next stage of human evolution, a consciousness that can access quantum field memory directly while simultaneously interfacing with technological information systems. The choice is stark. Contract back to brain-only knowing and lose access, or expand to include the quantum field. The cost of refusing access is that you will constantly be dismissing the knowing that appears, doubting the expertise that emerges, and resisting the internal recognition that is attempting to guide you. You will be creating internal conflict where your consciousness knows more than your ego acknowledges. However, once you have experienced hundreds of instances of field-sourced information proving accurate, once you have verified knowing that had no source in your personal history, the evidence becomes undeniable. You no longer believe quantum memory exists. You know it exists through direct, repeated verification. This is the point of irreversible shift. You cannot unknow this truth. The extraordinary becomes ordinary. This is the moment when you recognize that you are not a separate, limited individual, but a universal consciousness experiencing an individual perspective while retaining connection to the wholeness. That connection is the memory access. Once quantum memory is activated and integrated, life takes on a radically different quality. Questions are answered through access. When you need an understanding, information often appears from the field, supplementing your traditional research. Decision-making is informed by collective wisdom. You are not limited to your personal experience. You can access the field where countless consciousnesses have faced similar choices and stored the resulting wisdom. Your decision remains yours, but it is a profoundly more informed decision. Creative work flows from the field. When you write, teach, or create, information emerges that surprises even you with its depth and clarity. You are filtering the field's collective knowing through your unique perspective. Understanding accelerates. Instead of years of study, you access the quantum memory where mastery already exists, downloading the understanding developed by others, allowing you to build on a foundation of collective achievement. I chose the expansion. I chose to accept quantum memory as real. And that choice opened a level of knowing, understanding, and creative capacity that brain-based learning alone could never provide. It is not one source versus the other. It is integration quantum field and brain a synthesis that creates a richer, deeper, more comprehensive knowing. Now, I ask you, take a deep breath, and as you breathe, notice this moment. What do you know right now that you never learned? What sudden, quiet certainty exists in your mind that has no traceable source? That knowing isn't imagination. It's not fantasy. It is your quantum memory activating. It is consciousness accessing the universal field. Track these instances. Verify them. Accumulate the evidence. My wish for you is that you find profound health and the clarity to recognize this magnificent truth about yourself. If this transmission helped you recognize that the signs you've been experiencing are real access rather than imagination, and that your consciousness can perceive beyond the brain's limitations, then please subscribe. We are building the collective field that supports this awakening. Your recognition normalizes this phenomenon for millions of others. Right now, I want you to go into the comments and simply write, "Quantum memory is real." That statement acknowledges the integration. It tells the field you are ready to receive. It is the final sign that your unlocking has begun. Welcome to the truth of what you are.